everybody. Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato at the DraftKings studio in Boston. We got a great show for everybody today. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and all those other fun places that you can catch our show here. Fun one coming up today. We still get to look longingly at the start of the NBA Finals, and boy, do we need it now more than ever. And I guess with Claudia, we can talk about the thing that happened yesterday, but we also got some fun guests coming up on the show today, so why don't you tell the people who we got going on?
Yes, I can't wait till Thursday. We need something to talk about. Out of control the WNBA is with all of this Caitlin Clark drama. We'll get into all of it, and wrestling champ Trick Williams will join us in hour one. Changed man, Kyrie opens up on his return to Boston as we dig into Thursday's game one. And because yesterday was such a quiet day, guys, I do want to talk about this Mega Millions jackpot that hits $560 million, the ninth largest ever. Yeah, we'll get to all that. But that's a lot of money, Senior. And you're the one that brought this up, and I started thinking about where I put that money.
So wait a minute. We've got all of this massive stuff going on in sports yesterday here. The WNBA essentially has a nuclear bomb dropped in its coverage in the middle of some of the biggest media platforms known to mankind. We've got all that going on. We've got Kyrie going back to Boston. We've got Luka going back to Dallas. And Dad, you're coming in here this morning and want to talk about how to pick your winning lottery numbers. I have that right?
Well, it's all... Yes, $560 million, as Claudia said, ninth highest ever. By the way, as we were discussing this before the show opened, you said you wait till it gets near $1 billion. So me and your mother have always said if we won, we'd split it amongst the kids. You're out. You're out. Since you don't care about it until it gets to $1 billion, somehow we'll try and get by on the $560
I got news for you. I don't think you're the one that makes those decisions. So I'll talk to your boss when we get off air and figure out how this is going to be split up.
Okay, that's fair. But today is the day we'll talk about. Everybody sits there. Everybody wonders, what do you do with the money? Now, you win $560 million, you probably end up with $300 million. Ho hum, you'll be okay. But that's what you do, right? Until this drawing, you're trying to think of what you're going to do. What are you going to do with that money? You're going to buy an island? You're going to buy a car? You're going to buy a boat? You're going to buy a house? What are you going to buy with that money? So hell yeah, man. And I still can't find an answer to it. And you think I would, and I have tried. Do more winners come from picking your own numbers or from I always do quick pick. And I don't know if more winners come from picking your own numbers or quick pick. I have not gotten an answer on that.
I want to know what my dad's version of trying to do that research was, because God love you, Dad. I don't know about your dexterity to use the internet to its full powers to find that stuff. As you sit draped in technology, you talked about what you would do if you won the money. You apparently already seem to have hit the jackpot here. I'm looking around and you got screens on the wall. You got all this new technology in front of you here. Your at-home tech, my brother Jake, has gone here and tricked you out something serious. So maybe you've already won in life. Maybe you need to calm down with this lottery talk.
The setup I have now, Jake putting up the monitors behind me, as you said, in front of me, behind the camera, he put up another monitor that mirrors my computer to be up there, and then I have my iPad. So do you know what I don't have to do anymore, Mike? Do you know what doesn't have to happen an hour before the show? I don't have to print up the rundown.
I was going to say, for the first time in, 3 decades where you're not dealing with a paper rundown now?
That's kind of sad, though. That was nice in your old school handwriting, and I'm sad.
So is that your nice way of age shaming me, Claudia? I don't know. No.
What happens when technology fails? Then you won't have your paper.
I know. I should have a hard copy here. I'm a little nervous because since I have my computer mirrored on the screen and my iPad, I can have the rundown on one of them. I'm trying to figure out which one I want, how it's still all going to work. I got to have one thing on the right and one thing on the left. So I got to get left-hand dexterity a little bit better as well. There are some things to work out, but Jake is a magician. Jake has come in and just transformed this room to help me do better on the show. And I've already sent it off the rails. Instead of starting with the WNBA, which has all kind of headlines, I started with the lottery and $560 million. But I guarantee you there's a lot of people thinking about how they're going to spend their $560 million today.
Well, GoJo, I think you need some brownie points because it sounds like your brother's getting some more of that jackpot.
at GoJo and Golic on Twitter, are there a lot of people thinking about how they'll spend their $560 million right now? And how would you spend the $560 million jackpot? I've always said I would buy a coffee and card shop near the beach out here in Los Angeles. I would sell custom-made greeting cards at the coffee shop that I run by the water, and it would be delightful and pet-friendly, and everyone would have a great time. So I don't know if you guys have answers right off the bat, but that's been my stock answer for about a decade now. I know what I'm about.
That's nice. I can't follow that up, Senior.
You have no. I mean, I'll just wait to be told what we're spending it on. Basically,
fair point. That's a fair point.
So that's a fair point. So the last thing I'll say before we get to WNBA is I rank as I said. People say they love all their kids the same. That's a lie. Jake is the number one child today. So Mike, you are fighting with Sydney, Ben, and Jenny for the order of the day. But Jake is number one.
I feel like we need a sounder or some sort of graphic to play when my father's children ranking of the day drops a new edition when something like this happens. In years past, if this had been like the medieval times and my brother had come down and created fire for my dad, he'd be the subject of a new religion that just spawned. But instead now he just jumps to number one in the kid power ranking. So Jake's well earned that for the rest of the day here. We'll see if I can earn that in the rest of the show as we go forward here. And yeah, it would be weird to start in any other place besides the lottery. But then after that would be strange to start in any place other than what happened in the WNBA coverage yesterday. I felt like we had the appropriate version of that conversation coming off of what was, again, the face that launched 1,000 ships in this entire conversation was one hard foul in a basketball game. One hard foul that, yes, was something that did get upgraded to a flagrant one. It was Kennedy Carter in the game against the Sky against the Indiana Fever, has a hard foul against Caitlin Clark on an inbound, and it gets upgraded to a flagrant one later on. There was an admission by the WNBA, hey, this is a little bit out of bounds here, so we're going to upgrade this accordingly, but no one got fined, nothing happened during the game, and on we go. Or so we thought, because again, we saw that and said, hey, you know what? Maybe Caitlin Clark's teammates need to go over there and have her back a little bit more, but this is kind of what happens in sports. People are going to test you, especially early on, especially when you're the big face of a league coming in as a young player. And then it all went crazy yesterday between Monica McNutt going on First Take and calling out Stephen A. Smith and his platform for not talking about the W much earlier than they had now. Pat McAfee has to retract some comments in the way that he referenced Caitlin Clark. And then everything from there just devolved into the wildest debate. And it all came back to this idea for me, Dad, is I realized very quickly, I always knew that there were going to be growing pains anytime something scales the way the WNBA is going to now. It had been popular amongst a core group of fans. There had obviously been a bunch of talented players, coaches, and staffers in there already. But when you add in someone like Caitlin Clark, and then by extension, a lot of this rookie class, you end up getting this explosion in coverage that we saw for women's college basketball in the fall. And what we've seen with the growing pains are a clear understanding that we do not yet know how to cover this league, all of us, the right way responsibly. So, Dad, you've been doing this a lot longer than me. Do you have any ideas how we go about this? You have probably seen the rise and fall of many leagues because you're almost 1,000 years old now, so you can let us know how the hell we're supposed to do this.
Hey, listen, it's got to at some point settle in. So, I mean, God, there's so many ways to go here, but let me try and do an overview of this. Remember, the league went before this class got here, okay? This rookie class led by Caitlin Clark. The league 2 years ago went from $60 million in gross revenue to $200 million before this class got here. So this women's sports were growing, all right? They were on the rise, and this just really put an exclamation point on it. So, you know, all the talk about, you know, with Monica McNutt, if you covered it 3 years ago, you didn't cover it. I would have to say, because I've been in this business 3 years ago and 23 years ago, not a lot of people were covering it. They weren't. The WNBA now has the biggest spotlight they have ever had. There are more people parachuting in that don't know the history of the WNBA who are just seeing it now for the first time and putting everything on this year as this is what the WNBA is. Some of the greatest women basketball players of all time have played in the WNBA years ago. This has been going on for a while, but it wasn't covered. Now it's being covered. And to sit there and try and pick out what's the reason. Listen, there are, hundreds of some women in this, right? And nobody thinks the same way. Is there a jealousy component? Yes. Is there probably a racial component in here? Probably yes. Is there, the different components that can be the jealousy component, the spotlight component? I think it's all, and the rookie component. Listen, one thing that's been going on forever, rookies coming into a league, especially high-profile rookies, are going to get banged around. That's going to happen. And it didn't start with Caitlin Clark. Flagrant fouls didn't start with Caitlin Clark when she got hit in the game against the Fever. It all didn't start there. This has been going on for years. But the WNBA now has its biggest spotlight ever on them, and this is now what people are seeing and hearing from Caitlin Clark, from Angel Reese and others about how they feel about what's going on. But I think the biggest reason, Mike, is it's the biggest spotlight that I said, and people who haven't watched the W are now watching the W, and everybody is getting their first impression of it years after this league started.
Yeah, I think that's really at the core of it is for a lot of people, their depth of knowledge walking into a conversation they want to be a part of is just not up to snuff. And instead of relying on and platforming the people, which to an extent is going on, the reason you have that interaction yesterday with Stephen A. Smith and Monica McNutt is because Monica McNutt is on that show to be the person with the depth of knowledge that you're asking to come in and help bridge the gap on the conversation. But then people get in their feelings when called out about certain things that are objectively true, like Stephen A. Smith and company could have made the decision to put that on their platform years before when it wasn't as popular. But Stephen A. went on later and said, hey, they didn't have the same visibility. They didn't have the same fan base, which would in turn apply to the people you also platform for him wanting to take credit for Monica McNutt and others' success later on. But that's too inside baseball for all this. What I'll say, though, Dad, is you're right. And a lot of that comes back because you're right. The flagrant foul thing, it's not even new to this year. Like Angel Reese, who was one of the other people who's a subject of all of this, got bashed in the back of the head. I think it was by Alyssa Thomas who got ejected from a game over that. And Angel was actually someone who spoke yesterday from actual WNBA sound. We had Angel Reese and some other members of the Chicago Sky that were talking about the way that a lot of this was framed the other day at the podium. And this is what Angel had to say.
Yeah, the reason why we watching women's basketball is not just because of one person. It's because of me too, and I want y'all to realize that. Like, it's not just because of one person. A lot of us have done so much for this game, and Kennedy has been here before, obviously, but there are so many great players in this league that have deserved this for a really, really long time, and luckily, it's coming now.
If you're going to watch the game, watch all of the game before you make opinions. Just watch the whole game and get to know the players. Those that saying you don't know players, you haven't watched the WNBA. Get to know your players that are already here and already in this league and already trying to make a mark.
Yeah, so listen, there is some clear frustration over the fact that there are new people coming in that don't have that same depth. I think that shines through pretty overwhelmingly there. The one thing I will say that Kennedy's right on is this would all be a lot better served if people actually, and the large portion of the audience that's coming in right now, was actually here to watch the games and talk about the things that have gone on instead of just seeing the clip and using that in their I mean, they talked about this on The View the other day. And no, I don't know how many of them took the time to actually go and watch that, let alone even check a box score before we got into this discussion. When it hits the talk show circuit, we're kind of having a different discussion about all this. So I do think that takeaway, Claudia, is the right one, which is if we're looking at how do we do this better, it starts with covering it like a sport. Like not covering it like how you think you cover a sport that involves women. It's how you cover a sport full of athletes that happen to be women in this case.
I was just about to say, if anyone wants to point fingers, it's at the media. It is, and that's not saying like the media is doing wrong. We just cover what people want to talk about, and that's why this is an endless ongoing circle. Like Angel Reese was the most talked about college player that year, the year before, and she has Shaq texting her every day, and she had all these celebrities going to her game. Like she had her spotlight. Caitlin Clark has her spotlight. As a woman who grew up playing sports, clearly not to this level, but I was appreciative of anyone coming to the game if there was a really good player on the team, and we weren't making money off of that, but it's sort of, the space I'm in now in sports betting. There wasn't women in sports betting when I was first getting into it. There was one or two, But the more faces I saw going on TV and doing different hits, I knew that was opening up the path for me. And that was raising the money I was going to make and the opportunities I was going to make. Sure, there's a little bit of jealousy on my part, and I didn't have cameras and microphones coming up to ask me how I felt about it. So I understand maybe if they're saying things that they didn't mean, in the heat of the moment. But then they also are going back saying, I didn't regret this, I didn't regret that. So that's another conversation to be had. But I think if you want to translate this into other sectors of the world, you can do that. And as a woman speaking professionally in my field, I'm grateful for the people who sort of opened up that path. So I understand Caitlin Clark has been put in this light that's sort of tough for her to get out of, but that is media's fault. We are putting the clips of her being taken down, the clips of her being bullied, that's how people's calling it, her teammates not standing up for her. That's not her fault. It's the media putting that out there. And unfortunately, that's what people want to watch. But in the end, it's raising the opportunity and the eyes and the pay level for everybody else in the league. So I understand the jealousy, but it's just unfortunate this is the way it's turning out.
To that point, Claudia, just numbers-wise, the difference in the scope, even this year, because Dad talked about it, the jump financial that was already happening, the arrow was pointing up. But so far this year, a league-high 82,857 fans have shown up to watch Caitlin Clark in Indianapolis, compared to just 81,336 who went to all 20 Fever home games last year. So that is even more. And like, Dad, that's the ancillary benefit of even the bad version of this at the beginning, because we were always going to screw this up. I think this is just in our nature, the way the 24-hour media cycle works. This isn't a league coming up when I was even going through high school and college where you'd lay down and you'd watch the same Sports Center 3 times in a day, and that was how you got your news. This is the 24-hour beast. We demand sacrifices to the altar of content here, and this is the way that it went for this. But the ancillary benefit is you are getting more people that, even if they parachuted in bad faith or make the mistake at the beginning, have the opportunity because of this to learn about the rest of the W, to learn about the fact that Cameron Brink is blocking everybody's shots as a rookie, to learn about the fact that A'ja Wilson is on track for another historically great season as the league's current best player and face, that you'll see the Liberty and the Aces and the Sun play through all of this, and hopefully somewhere along the lines actually take away some of the good from this outside of an ugly conversation born from people that don't know as much.
But until that happens, and more people are watching right now, to your point, Claudia, the media, that's all you're going to see. Caitlin Clark gets cheap shotted. You're going to see other clips, and that's fine. That's fine for the media to put out there, because what do? You're trying to grab headlines. You're trying to get people to watch. I'm not talking about, idiot reporters that say, oh, make the heart sign to me and that'll go on great, like the Doyle dude did. I'm not talking about that. But when you sit there and talk about the highlights and show whatever you're going to show from the rough start and the comments that are made, that's what sells right now. Kennedy Carter, I completely agree with her. You could tell the frustration in her voice. You know that foul was out of frustration. The most amazing thing to me about that foul is that ref that was standing 3 feet away that didn't call that a flagrant right away. And quite honestly, it wasn't the hit. I've seen cheap shots before. It's happened before. And oh my God, it's going to happen again. It was amazing to me the ref didn't call it right away. But you could tell her frustration and just what she said. There are others that came before. You don't think when LeBron came in the league, there weren't those that wanted to hammer him? You don't think all the headlines Magic and Bird got after playing in the NCAA championship, now coming in as rookies, back when you could smack people around, they were getting the crap kicked out of them because they were rookies, high profile coming in? And not just Caitlin Clark, this whole class. I agree with Angel Reese. This whole class is really been incredible, but we have to grow into it now. So I get Kennedy Carter's frustration with there was a lot of great players before, so just watch the games. That's the goal. And more are watching the games now than ever. So at some point, Mike, I think we will settle in to it being treated and everybody covering it like a regular sport. But right now, even though it's been around for a long while, it's new to a hell of a lot of people who are just getting into it.
So a little bit of advice and guidelines. Watch some of the games. Check out someone that's not Caitlin Clark for a day, and then treat the people that you're watching like athletes. Don't treat them like anything else. Treat them like athletes, and we'll all get along a lot better. Coming up next, we'll talk about some very rich athletes looking to line up their money after Justin Jefferson hit the Brinks truck yesterday. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Claudia Bellafato here. And, Dad, we talked a lot yesterday about the Justin Jefferson payday. The Viking star wide receiver broke all the way off to now stay there and call it home for a long time there. A 4-year extension that's going to pay him roughly $35 million per year in new money. And that included, Dad, because we always wait for the details to come out of these contracts. As you see, $110 million guaranteed and all these numbers wrapped up into it. The deal pays Justin Jefferson essentially $88.7 million fully guaranteed at signing. So while that's not the signing bonus, the amount of money in his contract that he will see no matter what, as soon as he put pen to paper, $88.7 million, which certainly makes him the highest paid non-quarterback that we've seen so far. So just basking in the glow of that for a second for a guy that overwhelmingly deserves it yesterday. A cool moment to watch now. His life and his family's life changed forever.
Incredible. And the domino effect that we'll get into that's going to start with a couple of other receivers. But we're also finding out, we always talk about value of position, and quarterback always leads the way. So then how do we value it's always been like we talked about, left tackle, cornerback, wide receiver, rush end. Well, you can see now the top non-quarterback deals in the NFL. The best one is now Justin Jefferson. The next 4 are Nick Bosa, D lineman, A.J. Brown, wide receiver, Chris Jones, D lineman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Tyreek Hill, wide receiver. You're seeing those 2 positions be the 2 positions of value after the quarterback. So you're playing those positions and you're playing really well. You got a nice payday coming up.
Yeah, I always said if you want to find out where the money's going in football, just draw the line from the quarterback, and the people that come closest to it in protecting, meaning offensive tackles, or attacking defensive linemen are probably going to be near the highest. But then after that, Dad, we've seen in what's become more of a passing league. And I am surprised yesterday, supply and demand. There are more good young wide receivers coming into the NFL than ever, and yet we're seeing so many of these paydays still pop off for wide receivers. Now, there's a reason Justin Jefferson so far outpaced everyone else is because he so far outpaces everybody else in terms of his production and what he affords his team. But now we're looking at that next wave of guys, Dad, and it really seemed yesterday, I thought it was going to be much more of a Jamar Chase conversation coming off yesterday. But CeeDee Lamb and the Dallas Cowboys, I guess unsurprisingly because it's the Cowboys, took center stage in terms of what the rubric this deal presented might afford CeeDee Lamb, who we mentioned statistically not far off, as you're seeing right now watching on DraftKings Network, and in some cases a little bit ahead of Justin Jefferson in terms of production. I think a lot of people looked at and said, hey, could be due for a deal well into 9 figures and probably just south of what we saw with Justin Jefferson, because even if you see the stats there, I think there's an understanding from most people that watch and cover the sport, CeeDee Lamb is not quite the receiver Justin Jefferson is, even if he's great and deserving of a payday himself.
So who do you think gets more, Jamar Chase or CeeDee Lamb? Because those are the next 2 up, right? I'll continue to say T. Higgins, who's tagged, and one of the 9 tagged players. The other 8 have all signed deals. He is not. I think he stays tagged. I had thought Jamar Chase would be the guy, but then again, remember you're with Cincinnati, who is known to be not the most spending team out there. And Jerry Jones will spend, but sometimes you scratch your head on how he spends when he was extending all the guys except Dak before Dak's last contract. And now we're kind of in that situation again of, do you extend Dak to help yourself on the salary cap? But you got to take care of CeeDee Lamb and at some point Micah Parsons as well. I always thought like Jamar Chase was going to get a better deal. Now, again, it's probably not worthy of conversation. We're splitting hairs. They're probably going to be second and third. I guess that's a question. Do you think they both are above A.J. Brown, who is now second to Justin Jefferson?
Well, Dad, this is the thing that would frustrate me if I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, because I saw Josina Anderson yesterday say that she was told that the talks between the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb were expected to speed up beyond previous pace because, quote, there's at least a number with the amount that Justin Jefferson got in his contract. And we remember Jerry Jones coming out and saying, I want to wait for a few more leaves to fall. Why? This is the trouble you get yourself into now. We all agree Justin Jefferson, better at his job than CeeDee Lamb is at his job right now. It's not by a wide margin, but Justin Jefferson's largely considered the best wide receiver in the game. And so now you have that out there. You're right. In terms of fully guaranteed dollars in the contract, Dad, Tyreek Hill is second among wide receivers with $52 million guaranteed in his contract. Justin Jefferson's number is 88.7. There's a massive gulf between those two things. And if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you probably could have kept that number closer to Tyreek Hill, closer to A.J. Brown than you're now going to get with this CeeDee Lamb number out here. And it's the frustration I feel like Cowboys fans have had with this team for a while, which is they always seem to be waiting for the market to go out here and dictate the terms instead of doing what we see so many teams, a.k.a. their partner in crime in the NFC East and the Philadelphia Eagles do, which is get out ahead of this stuff and pay guys so that the market rate soon leaves those contracts behind, and all of a sudden you feel like you got a deal.
Yeah, they don't get out ahead of it. You're absolutely right. That has been an issue there for sure, while others do. Listen, Minnesota tried to get out ahead of this last year. They offered Justin Jefferson a deal last year, and there are guys who bet on themselves, and Justin Jefferson was one of them. His deal last year would have paid him $28 million a year. Now we waited that year, even got injured during the year, but still showed he's the best receiver in the league. So he's making $7 million average annual salary a year more for the 4-year extension than he would have what he was offered last year. So he bet on himself and he won. With the Cowboys, they don't even let you bet on yourself. They just waiting for the leaves to fall was, I guess with Jerry Jones, there's plenty of statements that make you scratch your head a little bit. But let me tell you, a leaf didn't fall here. A tree fell. Jerry, a tree just fell. So if you can't get this deal done now, and I imagine it will, because again, now you have the parameters, but because you waited, you are definitely paying top dollar for CeeDee Lamb, and Cincinnati's paying top dollar for Jamar Chase. And from the player standpoint, and we're always going to be from the player standpoint, they're going to get more because of it. So we're happy for that. But the team could have had a say in it. Now, maybe they would have tried to get ahead of it with CeeDee Lamb, and maybe he would have turned it down like Justin Jefferson did. Maybe. But we don't know because it didn't happen.
Yeah, no, but as you said, a tree fell in the woods here and everybody heard it now. I do think that's an incredible point. Justin Jefferson bet on himself in a year where he got hurt. He had 4 different quarterbacks go through his team, and still the takeaway at the end of the year was this man is so undeniably good that we're going to give him more money than any non-quarterback has received in the NFL. That is an absolutely hilarious but true scenario that you just laid out here that underscores this player's value. And you're right now. I mean, for the conversation about who gets paid next to Dad, I think the Jamar Chase thing that weighs in here too with me is Cincinnati did already pay their quarterback. Like, they have planted their flag and their financial planning around Joe Burrow already in a way that Dallas has not laid out in the future yet for their quarterback. And while we're talking about growing receiver salaries, Dad, quarterback's always still going to be your biggest expenditure. We've seen those salaries do nothing but go up at a rate that's nowhere close to their peers. And so while Dallas still has that hanging in the ether, Dad, you might have more money if you're not planning for Dak beyond this year, which some of us speculate maybe they're not given the way they've dealt with him. But I do think because Cincinnati at least got that out of the way, and now you can play with the cap around the quarterback the way we always see teams do, it should put you in better position to then structure everything else based off that.
Knowing the way Dallas handles things, they are planning on being rid of Dak after next year. Dak will have a phenomenal year this year, lead his team into the playoffs, and then they're going to have to pay him more than what they maybe would have extended him for. I think real quick, what else may have helped Minnesota now? I think Justin Jefferson was going to be the highest paid wide receiver in the league. But you see a huge amount of distance between him and the next guy. I think what helps there, remember, Dak's going to have a big number this year, and Joe Burrow, got paid, in Cincinnati as well. So in Minnesota, you're on a rookie wage scale, right? So you got the money. That's what we talk about. You have the money in Minnesota because you have a rookie, so you have more money to spend for the next couple of years before you supposedly have to pay a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't hide that money around there, and now we wait for the next leaf to fall in this entire ordeal. But coming up next, we'll take a look at where you should put some of your money, looking towards the best division in football for next year. We'll get to that next here on GoJo and Golic.
back to GoJo and Golic as we continue our NFL talk. We head to Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings. Stay tuned throughout the show to hear everything DraftKings has to offer. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. For this edition, we are talking about the division with the most combined wins. AFC North, guys, is the favorite, a plus 225, but NFC North not too far away, second shortest odds at plus 330. Senior, are we cashing or trashing the AFC North to win this at plus 225?
I am definitely cashing that. That's not where I put my shekels, though, because they're the favorite. After I win the $560 million Mega Millions drawing tonight, I am going to take a crisp $10 bill, and I'm going to put it on the NFC West. I'm going to go down that road. I like that division. I think if there's a division that can challenge, because I do think the AFC North is correct as the favorite, and I do think they probably will be the best there. But if there is a division that challenges them, and I see NFC West at plus 550, I would probably throw down a little bit of money on them just to pick somebody with a little higher odds, to make more money. The 560 mil won't be enough. I need an extra few hundred over the top of that.
Good bankroll management.
There you go. That crisp $10 bill is going to go a long way in supplementing that income here at plus 550. But no, I think this is all situated right. I would, if you're asking me right now, cash the AFC North is the one we'd expect to hit on that. I just think, especially adding Joe Burrow back into this. And again, I'll go back even to the Steelers. Yeah. This was a playoff team last year against all odds, who made a coordinator change, who had Mason Rudolph starting meaningful games at the end of the season again, like all of these different things that should not have netted you what you ended up getting for this team. And now I get the opinion of Russell Wilson is markedly different than it used to be in the past, but he's still a quarterback with his bleep together far more than anyone they had under center, as the Kenny Pickett experiment didn't work out. And now you've got Arthur Smith there as a coordinator. That's someone with meaningful NFL experience that you can trust at this level. So, Dad, I think the Steelers, provided their defense stays healthy and they get everything worked out with Cam Hayward, TJ Watt in one piece, that should still be a team that rounds out the depth of this division much better than any of their other counterparts, where in the NFC North, I love the Bears, but I'm still not sure if they're going to be playoff ready year one as this team comes together. The AFC East, the Patriots are going to be bad. The NFC West is where you and I actually agree. I think the Cardinals have a chance to be a better roster than the Patriots going into this season, rounding out what should be a really good division.
Because I look at that, the question is on the NFC North, right? They only had one team with double-digit wins. That was Detroit. The NFC West had two. Obviously, the AFC North had three like that. So I think the bet on the NFC North is the fact that everybody believes Chicago is going to be so much better, right? That's the reason, because that's what you're deciding with between the NFC North and the NFC West, who we both like maybe to be the second best division. Arizona only had 4 wins last year, so we're betting on them to be better. As the NFC North, the Bears were the worst team, but they, it was actually them in Minnesota that had 7 wins. Now, Minnesota is starting out with probably a rookie quarterback, if not a rookie, a guy who's turned into a backup in Sam Darnold on his 1-year, $10 million deal. So that's really kind of what you're looking at, right? The bottom of those divisions on who you think will play best.
Yeah, well, and I think, listen, the Packers should be able to buy you a few extra wins, right? Like, I understand they made the postseason last year, but a 9-win team that I think a lot of people look at and the trajectory that they're on. I mean, Mike Tannenbaum, our old buddy at ESPN, went on Dan Patrick the other day and said if he was drafting players to start a team with right now, it would be Patrick Mahomes 1 and Jordan Love 2. And while that's a little rich for my blood, it does underscore how big a jump Jordan Love made during the course of last year, where all those same young receivers that were struggling, that we heard about during Aaron Rodgers last year, finally hit some traction, and you don't even have all those guys up and running last year that now should be in this offense with another year with that quarterback. So, Dad, there's a chance that Packers team pushing Detroit every bit of the way for the division as a double-digit win squad this year.
I agree. Listen, I did the Packers early last year when Jordan Love was struggling, and I did them later in the year, including the playoff win over the Cowboys when Jordan Love was hitting his stride. And there was just an incredible progression that he made. And now, into the offseason, into another season, a lot of expectation there as well to challenge Detroit for the top of that division.
Yep. So a lot of exciting stuff on that front, Claudia, looking at the divisions.
Can I ask you a question? I'm looking now, we're talking about trying to find value. Is it surprising to you guys at all that the NFC East has the third longest at plus 950? Like NFC South, AFC South makes sense, but do you think there's any value there with the NFC East, GoJo?
I think a little bit, but I don't really trust Washington as much as other people might with Jaden Daniels coming in. And then the New York Giants, I'm staying far away from that situation right now. So half that division being somewhat turmoil, people thinking the Cowboys might even take a step back this year. I think it's tough to sink your teeth into that division. So we got plenty more time to get into that as we look towards the season. But Dad, speaking of the NFC East, in the most unfortunate terms yesterday, unfortunately, we got the devastating news. Hall of Famer Larry Allen suddenly passed away while on vacation at the age of 52. Dad, one of the most dominant players at any position in NFL history, and a guy that you know certainly very well from your time in the NFL. Just an incredibly devastating loss. So sad for his family, for the Cowboys family that loved him so much, to see a guy that I grew up that had Paul Bunyan-like highlights and someone who always felt larger than life playing the position that I wanted to go on and play, knowing full well I'd never be able to do it the way Larry Allen did, a man who I watched bench press 700 pounds, walk down linebackers on interceptions. He was bigger, faster, stronger, and better than most everybody I saw, and I can't imagine what a tough loss this is for so many people that were close to him.
And, obviously I knew him more as the football player, but you listen to his teammates and from that era. Now, that's an era I played against the Cowboys the most, and I know a lot of those guys, and it said he was just such a good family guy off the field. He's someone that went to Sonoma State. They got him in the second round, pick number 46. First and foremost, obviously 52 years old, just horrifically young for such a sad state of affairs without question. So certainly thoughts out for his family. It's just horrible news. Mike, him as a football player, I think one of the best things I can say about my career is it ended before he got in the league. He came in the league in 94, and that was a year, my last year playing was 93. I ran for a couple of teams in 94, but didn't play, and then I retired. So, and he came into the league in 94. This was a dude that players on defense actually tried to not line up on him. I mean, you're talking about the best of the best when you get to the NFL in this particular sport, and there is hierarchy everywhere. And I talk about this with a guy, my teammate Reggie White, who is in a separate category as far as D lineman. Larry Allen is that with O lineman. I say Anthony Munoz was the best offensive lineman to play. Larry Allen is in that picture. Larry Allen is in that room. Larry Allen was fair. Larry Allen played left tackle, left guard, right guard. He only didn't play center. And he was an animal. Dude had a dip tin in his sock and had a dip in his mouth while he was playing. Yeah. And just steamrolled you, would come to the line and tell you where the ball is going and just destroy you. I'm telling you, at the highest level, players would actually try and line up away from him to not be hit by him. Dude was an animal. The only guy I saw as strong lifting as him, Mike, in that area was Willie Rofe, an old lineman who played most of his time with the New Orleans Saints. I played against, Willie was in that era as well. For Larry Allen, it was unbelievable, but he had strength, he had leverage, he had speed, as everybody sees the clip of him running down a linebacker on an interception. He had it all, and he tried to kill you every single play. He just didn't do his job and go back to the huddle. He tried to kill you when you were allowed to try and kill people in the NFL. One of the greatest to ever do it. And just obviously on the outside of that, the family, just horrific news for one of the best ever to play at that position.
An 11-time Pro Bowler, a 6-time All-Pro, a Pro Football Hall of Famer in 2013, and someone who will be sorely missed as we heard the outpouring of support from his former teammates and those that knew him yesterday. Rest in peace to the great Larry Allen. All right, big weekend coming up in Las Vegas. And no, it is not just because me and my group of former college teammates are getting ready to head out to Sin City this weekend and have a little fun. No, NXT Battleground is going to come this weekend out of the UFC Apex facility in Las Vegas, Sunday, June 9th. It streams exclusively on Peacock, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern that night. And if you're tuning in for that, you're going to see the best in the business doing it. Trick Williams, kind enough to join us now, the current NXT champion. And he made sure to come in wearing the belt and borderline shirtless, which I feel like is the absolute right way to do this as the champ. So good morning. We appreciate your time and the attire, man. How you doing?
And thank you so much. Finally arrived. Trick Williams in the building. I got 13 buttons and I don't use none of them.
I tell you, do you look for any reason you can to either have your shirt off or your shirt unbuttoned?
Man, look, man, I can look at you and I can tell that you're an athlete and I can tell you was doing your thing back in the day. And, you know, guys like us, every chance we can to take our shirt off, we usually use that opportunity. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, I could assure you, Trick, if you had seen my dad back in the day, he'd probably be better off doing that now. Dad, you wouldn't be the first to admit this. Better off doing that now than in the middle of your playing days.
No, middle of my playing days, I was 300-some pounds. That would not have gone over well. Though I could have had, if I had a belt like yours, I could have hid some of my fat. It would have worked out okay.
You know, the crazy thing is the ladies love bellies too. You know, it's more of a confidence thing. You know, you just let it all out. You know, it doesn't even matter.
There we go. The ladies love bellies and the ladies love champions. And for you, walking into this event now as the champ, the way you are, how excited are you about this? A first, given where you guys are going to have this coming out of here, but obviously you're no stranger to dominating on this platform.
Man, I'm fortunate, man. I'm blessed, man. Another opportunity to make history. You know, another time we get to do something for the first time, man. We at the UFC Apex, you know, June 9th, and I'm the champion, leading this brand into new heights. So I'm extremely excited about that.
We've talked a lot over the last couple of months, Trick, about athletes in one sport playing another sport, football to NBA, NBA to NFL, and all kind of mixtures in there. You're a guy that played football at Hampton, then at South Carolina. Were you a wrestling fan then? When did it first come to you that from a football player to a pro wrestler on when that switch may happen?
Man, to be honest with you, like while I was really playing football, I never was thinking about wrestling. However, I was a fan of wrestling way back in the day when I was just, you know, a young child, 3-4 years old, all the way through like the Attitude Era is what we call it. You know, that's when Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, you know, these guys, Booker T, the WCW, Monday Night Wars, all that, you know, that's when I was watching wrestling heavily. Matter of fact, I was watching wrestling so much that my first cuss word was opening a can of whoopee at 3 years old.
All right, so this was written in the stars back then. So if we knew already as you're opening up a can of whoop ass at 3 years old that you were probably destined for this kind of stage here, what about your first football memory? You mentioned you go and walk on at South Carolina. You're from Columbia, right? So do you have like a first memory of Gamecock football where you knew that was something that you wanted to pursue the way you did?
Oh, man. So, man, it's funny with the Gamecocks, man. Like, I have so many great stories, man, playing under the legendary Steve Spurrier. But I can tell you, so, you know, there's a few things. So this is when I learned how to stand up for myself. Now, this is one of the first meetings we have with Steve Spurrier, and I make a play. Now, mind you, my birth name is Matrick Belton. But for whatever reason, it's very hard for people to understand the first time when they see it on paper. So, you know, I'm in the meeting, and I make a great play. And I was new to the team. I was a walk-on the team. And he said, "Who is this?" And, you know, I raised my hand. He said, "Matrick." And I remember that gut feeling I got right then and there, like, I got to stand up and correct myself. You know, my name is Matrick. But, you know, I was in there with the legendary ball coach, Steve Spurrier. So I kind of let it slip a little bit too long. And for the next 3 years, I was fighting, try to remind everybody, hey, my name is Matrick. So once I get here to the WWE, I say, hey, I'm going to say my name. I'm going to say it loud, and I'm going to make it clear for everyone to know what my name is. And, you know, same thing happened. Matrick, no. My name is Matrick Belton, but you cut off the M&A. Now we got Trick Williams.
So did Steve Spurrier ever call you Matrick? Did he ever call you by your right name?
He did. But, you know, it gets to those points when, you know, when it kind of gets ingrained into your mind and you got to fight it. So it's more like a Matrick instead of just the natural Matrick. You know what I'm saying?
There we go. So we got
it was
Steve
a
Spurrier
valuable
on this.
lesson that I had to learn that day.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, listen, in your story, walking onto a team is always a challenging process for everyone. Steve Spurrier is someone that comes in with all this reputation. What else did you learn from Steve Spurrier that kind of helps you now? Is there any other Spurrierism that's kind of stuck in your head after all those years?
Yes, man. I think the biggest thing I learned from Steve Spurrier, which still holds to this day, is to keep it simple. One of my first meetings with Steve Spurrier, like I said, I transferred from Hampton University and decided to walk on at my dream school, South Carolina. And Steve Spurrier goes to the whiteboard. He has his marker in hand, and he's writing on the board. So I'm thinking, oh man, I'm about to get some of the greatest knowledge I ever seen in my life. I can't wait to jot this down and be a football guru myself. He goes to the board and he says, all right, guys, it's our first day of spring practice. So this is what we're going to do. And he writes out quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, offensive line. He say, quarterbacks, we're going to throw the ball. Running backs, we're going to run the ball. Tight ends, we're going to block. Hopefully, ain't that right? And maybe we catch the ball. And wide receivers, we're going to catch the ball too. All right, let's go practice. It's time to have a good time. And I remember sitting there like, man, I can't believe this is the University of South Carolina. We're number 4 in the nation. Stephon Gilmore, Jadeveon Clowney, Marcus Lattimore, Stephen Garcia. And it was so simple. But then it hit me like once we actually get out to the field and the plays that we drew up, what Steve Spurrier did was he didn't have a playbook that was meant for him. What he did was he made his playbook that was based off the team. So everybody can do what they do best. And it was literally just that. Keep it simple. You do what you do best and you work at what you're not good at, of course, but you do what you do best and you look good doing it. And if everybody does their job, the team is going to be okay. And it's crazy. Now that I'm a WWE superstar, I get out there on that stage and I do what I do best, nothing more, nothing less. And the people love it.
Well, wouldn't it be nice if we all had that mantra of keep it simple? We wouldn't have such a complicated world out there. It should be a lot easier than it is, no doubt about it. One of the other things, Trick, is I mentioned all the different sports before, and each sport takes a different kind of athletic ability. Pro wrestling, you guys are nuts. With some of the stuff that you guys do, I can't even believe how our bodies would fold or break. Talk about the athleticism, the difference of football athleticism and WWE and pro wrestling athleticism.
Man, it's actually funny you bring that up, because I've been playing football since I was around 4 years old to say 24, 25. And, for 20 years, I learned how to be an athlete and stay on my feet. Now, my first day on my journey to becoming a WWE superstar, I learned how to fall. And I learned how to hit the ground, and I learned how to do a flip and land on my back and different stuff like that. And it was against everything that I had ever learned as being an athlete. But that's when you learn, man, athletes learn how to, whatever hits them, you got to be able to land safe and be able to get up and keep pushing, which, that's kind of that's a deep thing. That's what we do. Whenever we fall, we get right back up and we get ready to do it again.
There's no doubt about it. And you have not only gotten back up, but gotten all the way up to the top, like you mentioned now at NXT. You're sitting there with the belt, getting ready to walk in and make more history this weekend in Las Vegas. Trick, we can't thank you enough for the time, man. This has been a ton of fun here. We hope we get to do it again with you. Good luck in Las Vegas. I'm going to try and leave it in good shape when I get out of town. I'm leaving that morning to get back here for work right as you guys are going to get ready to take over center stage. So hopefully it's all in one piece.
Hey, thank you so much, man. I'm going to motivate my pops to take his shirt off, too, so we can look like y'all.
There we go. See, shirtless dads in 20.
Welcome back into hour 2 of GoJo and Golic. And if you're not watching on DKN or YouTube, you should, because we have these awesome little intros. I just got to see GoJo as a little baby. NBA Finals Game 1 goes down on Thursday, and we are all waiting anxiously, and so aren't Celtics fans, because yes, it may have been 5 years since Kyrie played here, but they still want to boo him. And of course, we have to talk about that storyline. Irving has faced the Celtics twice since leaving, going with Brooklyn, eliminating Boston in 5 in 2021, and then getting swept in 2022. So of course he was asked about how he's feeling heading into this third series against Boston.
You know, we call it animosity, we call it hate, we call it, you know, it's going to be hell in Boston. I mean, there are real live circumstances going on in the world that are bigger than the basketball kind of competitive side of things and answering those questions. But I will say, you know, last time in Boston, I don't think that was the best, not this regular season, but when we played in the playoffs and everyone saw me flip off the birds and kind of lose my shit a little bit. That wasn't a great reflection of who I am and how I like to compete on a high level. You know, it wasn't a great reflection on my end towards the next generation on what it means to control your emotions in that type of environment, no matter what people are yelling at you. You know, I'm built for these moments to be able to handle circumstances like that. And I've been able to grow since then. So, of course, it's going to be a hectic environment, but I'm looking forward to it. And I see it as a healthy relationship to have with the fans, you know.
And for more on that personal growth that we've seen from Kyrie Irving and looking ahead to this series between the Mavs and the Celtics, delighted to be joined now by Mike Curtis, Mavs beat writer for the Dallas Morning News. And Mike, we appreciate your time this morning. And let's start there. The growth of Kyrie Irving since he arrived in Dallas, now to the point where we talk about this backcourt tandem of him and Luka Doncic being one of the best in the NBA, and in some estimations, one of the best of all time. What have you seen personally in covering him in terms of his growth since he's joined this team?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot for having me again, guys. Really glad to be here. But in terms of Kyrie Irving and his growth, since he got to Dallas, he's only been here a season and a half, but he's already made a lot of strides and growth as a person. And I think you can tell just by his answers that he delivers pretty much on a nightly basis. Every answer that he gives to a question that he's thrown at during a press conference is pretty much well thought out, intentional. He knows exactly what message he's trying to get across. And I don't think that was the case back when he was in Boston. He always cites that he was going through a pretty difficult time personally. And like he said, it's not the best representation of who he was back then. But he also said that he needed to do some, self-searching and growth. And he just had a lot of maturing to do in order to become that leader that he's become with the Dallas Mavericks. I think a lot of people thought that he was going to be this type of leader back when he was with the Celtics, so he could kind of guide guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But I think it's paid off for Kyrie, especially here in Dallas.
So we obviously know in Boston and with the Brooklyn Nets when he got fined for, you know, the double bird, looked like he was scratching the back of his head and such. And you know, how he acted then. So as you said, a year and a half with Dallas. When he first got to Dallas, you obviously knew of him as a player from Boston and Brooklyn, certainly before that. So what were your kind of thoughts of him coming in, and did the change happen during his time at Dallas, or did the change, it seemed, happen to him once he got to Dallas?
That's a pretty good question. And full transparency, I wasn't here when he first got to Dallas. I spent the last 2 seasons covering the Pistons, and I actually made the transition with 2 weeks left in the regular season. So I've seen Kyrie from afar, but I'm also getting a chance to cover him as a player over the last month and a half or so. But from everything I've heard, he's made that transition while he's been here in Dallas. I think he's spoken to the right people. I think he's done a lot of self-searching. But I think more than anything, he's in an environment where he's embraced. He's cultivated. He can be himself. We see him pretty much joking and laughing with pretty much everyone on the coaching staff. And I think just from a head coach perspective, he has a guy like Jason Kidd who's played at the highest level, won a championship, been through his ups and downs. And I think that commonality that he has with J-Kidd has really helped him here in Dallas.
All right, so you showed up in Dallas about the same time that the defense did. So why don't we also stick there, because that's been a huge story for this team down the home stretch of the season, has become one of, and in some net ratings and stats like that, the best defense in the NBA during that time period. How much has Luka Doncic's personal buy-in on that end do you think helped this team during that run?
I think it helped a lot. And I talked to Derrick Jones Jr., who's one of the best defenders on this team, about that exact thing during the Western Conference Finals. He said it was after the game that Luka had a career high 5 steals and 1 block. And he said he's all first team defense, jokingly, of course. But he also mentioned, like, if the best offensive star on our team can go out and take pride on that end, then why can't we as role players? So I think Luka and Kyrie's kind of willingness to step up and even just step up and take the challenge on that end has translated over to the rest of the team. But I think it also starts when you get a guy like Derrick Jones Jr., who they got on a minimum deal at the beginning of the season, and you add 2 guys like PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. That's pretty much turned this defense upside down. I think whenever guys get past Luka or Kyrie, you got guys like Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively just waiting at the rim, ready to contest. And of course, they weren't known for a defensive team before those trades, but I think now that they've done enough to put them in a position where they can win a championship, possibly.
You know, we talked about this yesterday, and role players are so important, and always who ends up stepping up. So you just mentioned more than a few of them for Dallas. Which in your mind would be that most important role player that needs to really get it going in this series?
Yeah, I'm going to go with PJ Washington. And I think I'm going to do that just because he has the ability to be that third scorer behind Luka and Kyrie. He scored 20 or more straight points during that OKC series. And you could tell that he had a confidence like no other. I don't think he's displayed that type of confidence before. We know he's known for the moment in the first round against the Clippers where he kind of struck the pose. And that's been circulating ever since he did it. But he's brought toughness to this team that I don't think they had before. And if he's able to knock down those shots, specifically that corner 3, which he's done pretty much in every series since the playoffs, I think it'll give the Mavericks a good shot to compete for this championship.
We've talked a lot, and we did off the top, about Kyrie Irving's reception going back to Boston. You mentioned, obviously, you haven't been here through all the, ebbs and flows of this Dallas franchise, but what's the sense that you get about town for the Kristaps Porzingis return? I feel like that's kind of a forgotten subplot here, that Kristaps, after his time in New York where he was drafted, did come to Dallas from 2019 to 2022 and is now going to make that return during this series. So is there anything simmering with that in the background? Is there any thought or feeling locally about Kristaps coming back here?
Yeah, I think it's one of those. I think Kyrie going back to Boston is obviously the major subject, but that other storyline of Kristaps Porzingis coming back to Dallas, that's got to be intriguing too, because he was thought of as that second option that the Mavs wanted to pair with Luka, and it didn't necessarily pan out for him. He was hurt for the majority of the time that he was here, and I don't think they connected as much as Luka did with Jalen Brunson, or as Luka has with Kyrie Irving. And I think he'll probably hear it from the fans. He'll probably get booed. I think that's natural whenever you're going to face your opposing team. And this Mavericks fan base, they don't forget. They may forgive, but they don't forget. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting to compare, I guess, the receptions that Kyrie gets in Boston compared to the reception that Kristaps gets here in Dallas.
Mike, I've been sort of a Luka fan, I guess you could say, over the last few years, and I'm always arguing for the fact that he deserves MVP. And a lot of times, although it's a season-to-season award, people like to say we need to see him win something before we give him the credit or put him on the pedestal that we've put the Joker. So can I ask you, what do you think, from Dallas and just the basketball world in general, a win here would do for Luka's legacy?
Yeah, a win here would do wonders for Luka's legacy. I think he's already on pace to become a Hall of Fame player. Some are even proclaiming him already as better than Larry Bird. which is pretty interesting in itself. But he had a historical year. He put up numbers that have never been done before. He was one of those 3 finalists for MVP, like you mentioned. Joker got it. I actually spoke to him after the announcement was made. He said he had a feeling that he wasn't going to win it, but it's something that he's going to be motivated by going forward. He still wants to win the MVP one day, but I think he'd rather get Finals MVP more at this point.
So how do you see the series going?
Oh, yeah, put me on the spot. Let's see. Yeah. I'm gonna go just because I've watched this team up close and I've watched this team battle. They've been down double digits and they've been able to overcome those odds. I'm gonna go with the Mavericks in 6. They play pretty well on the road. So I don't think going into Boston is gonna affect them much, if at all. I'm gonna go Dallas in 6, and I think they can close it out on their home floor.
All right, there we go. The bold prediction from Mike Curtis, kind enough to join us again. You can read him at the Dallas Morning News at Mike A. Curtis 2 on Twitter is where you can find him also there. And we'll see. I know we're all ready and raring for this to get going, and I'm sure everyone in Dallas frothing at the mouth to try and see if they can cap off this incredible run that, to your point, started at the trade deadline, completely reworked this team, and now has produced someone who looks like they can stare eye to eye with the Celtics team that's been one of the top in basketball all year and take it over the finish line. Mike, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much and enjoy the start of the finals. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Mavs in 6 would be the kind of thing that cracks open the ground in Boston and swallows that city whole if it were to take place. But he mentioned the big thing in all of this is Dallas's road success going all the way back to Oklahoma City, where they started their road winning streak during the postseason, is the difference maker. I think that the fact that they're so comfortable on the road in a series where home court belongs to the Boston Celtics, and to the clutch time difference here, where the Boston Celtics have been better this postseason, but overall that advantage tilts decidedly in favor of the Dallas Mavericks. So we won't make picks yet. We'll do that on Thursday before game 1. But which way you leaning right now, Dad?
Well, listen, I'm wondering too from Claudia where the money is going on this, because obviously Boston comes in as the favorite, best record in the NBA, but I'm sure people are looking at their road to the finals and then Dallas's road to the finals, and Dallas had the tougher road, and Dallas, when you're looking at both teams, I think you would say Dallas has the best player in Luka. So Claudia, I'm wondering, has the money shifted in this one yet?
So 73% of the bets are on Dallas to win. And I don't think that's too surprising because you're getting Dallas with plus money and how they've fared. And of course, we're talking about it. If you think Luka's the best player, that's not too surprising how Kyrie has looked. But it is 2 separate conversations. And this is going to be different for every book. Books will take a certain amount of bets that will shift the line, or big bets coming in. But I am seeing now $7,000 bet on the Celtics to win the final. But somebody got that at 5-1. So of course people bet this preseason, during the season, what have you. 2.5 on Dallas Mavericks, $1,000. $2,000 on Jason Tatum to win Finals MVP. $2,000 on Jaylen Brown to win Finals MVP. You get Kyrie, Luka with bigger bets. But so again, when it comes down to it, the majority of the bets, so that's some of the smaller bets, like you said, your little $10 bet with your Mega Millions, whether your unit size is $20, maybe even $100. Bets that aren't necessarily pushing the lines too much, but if a book's going to get a ton of high money bets, then that's really going to push these lines. And this is going to change throughout the series. But as of right now, yeah, over 70% at DraftKings of the tickets are on Dallas.
So Dad, using that as a proxy, you'd probably lean that way as well. Because I was going to say, it's obviously Boston. I think some of this is more of a vibes thing than anything else. Because if you're going strictly off the basketball, the team that we've seen this year is deeper, healthier. We've seen that highlighted during this postseason than pretty much everyone else they've played. Dallas is the first team where that's probably not the factor, especially considering we still don't know the biggest factor in all of this is what Kristaps Porzingis is going to look like in this series and what version of him we're going to get. But again, if this were to just play out and you were to auto sim based on how the quality of these basketball teams are, Boston should win this series probably in 6 games, but maybe even leaning closer to 7, given the way the Mavericks have completely reshaped their defense. But again, so much of this is the human element of sports, and you do feel like Luka Doncic, when it comes to the competitive edge of the superstar players in this game, certainly carries that advantage over Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I agree with that, and the way Kyrie is playing, because Luka's Luka, Tatum and Brown, you're going to get what you're going to get with them, but Kyrie has really, really done a nice job, obviously, in the postseason. Both these duos averaging right around 51 points. That's why I lean toward kind of the role players and who steps up. And then you got to look at the rim, right? With Lively and Gafford, at the rim, because so much.
But I mean, how much does that matter with the Boston Celtics team that lives so much of its life beyond the 3-point arc? I understand if Kristaps comes back, but the way the Celtics team has won games is by overwhelming people from beyond the arc. So that's the thing I worry about going forward as we match this up is, yes, Lively and Gafford have been great protecting this at the rim and going at him that way, but is this something where it becomes a bad math problem for the Dallas Mavericks eventually, who can dominate you, Luka and Kyrie getting to the paint, getting to the interior, and may have that opportunity without Kristaps being at the height of his powers in the middle, but ultimately they want to win games by taking 40-plus three-pointers and hitting more of them than they miss.
They do, but you play toward the rim. Can you get the Celtics in foul trouble, right? Can you get some of their players into foul trouble by playing more at the rim? I get it, trading 3 for 2 isn't going to work, but obviously a 3-pointer is a more high percentage than a 2-pointer, so you got to make them as well. And live by that. It's something they have done. To me, the biggest factor in this right now is, and I know they haven't played with him for in the post, is Porzingis and what he can do coming back and what he can bring to the table and how he fits back into the rotation. But yeah, you asked me right now, we're not going to make the official picks now, but I am leaning toward Dallas a lot because of how much they've improved on defense.
So that's for the series then, you're saying, Senior, right?
Yes.
Because I do want to talk about this game 1 line, which I know you guys will talk about, on Thursday. But the Mavs are getting 6.5 points. And this goes back to my point of, yes, the Mavs are seeing a ton of money. Like 72% are on the bet. 72% of the bets are on the Mavs to cover, yet this line hasn't budged. It's been sitting around 6.5. So the books are still saying, we believe the Celtics can cover this 6.5. And I don't know about you, GoJo Senior. It sounds like you would take the 6.5, but if you're going to give me 6.5 with the Mavs, even if they are on the road, I am tempted to take that in game 1, especially if we don't know if Porzingis will be out there or, if he's going to be 100%, which he won't be, because anyone coming off of injury can't be 100%.
No, and I'll be curious. We're gonna, we're gonna talk to the guys from All the Smoke coming up here tomorrow, Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. And I'd be curious, Dad, for an NBA player, how you go about structuring that game plan in game 1 when you don't know how much of Kristaps Porzingis. You assume you're going to get him back at some point because of everything we've heard about his trajectory for this NBA postseason, but you don't know how much he's going to be involved in the game plan, how much that's going to change the rotations. And so it feels like you've almost got to walk in with 2 different game plans about how to approach this team, and how much does that put Dallas on their heels already going into a hostile road environment in game 1. I'm with Claudia. I tend to side with Dallas in the points because they've been able to keep it close. We've seen plenty of other teams, including the Indiana Pacers, even when injured towards the end of that series, be able to stick right with this Boston Celtics team. But the Kristaps effect, not just for Boston and how they reintegrate him, but how you go out there and structure your defensive game plan if you're the Mavericks, is fascinating to me.
I'm taking the points in this one for sure. I had said I thought the Pacers would take a game in Boston, and they should have taken game 1. I mean, the lead they had with 10 seconds to go and ends up going to overtime and they lose. They had that game. And I think whether it's this game, but I'll give the 6 in this one, 6.5 in this one, I do think Dallas will win one of the games in Boston and take home court away from the Celtics.
Yeah, I agree. I think this Mavericks team has shown they're for real. And we talk about the gap in time and how much that helps the Celtics. Remember, Luka Doncic has been beat up for a lot of this postseason run. Yeah. We've seen him carry the questionable tag into plenty of games. So the fact that he's had a little bit of extra time to get his body right and recover there should absolutely benefit the Mavs coming out the gate in this series.
GoJo and Golic. Football star, I know not the NFL football, the soccer football star, Kylian Mbappé has officially signed with Real Madrid. This is after a decade-long pursuit that they had for him. And the press release was very short, very sweet, unlike usual NFL posts are. It says Real Madrid and Kylian Mbappé have reached an agreement where he will be a Real Madrid player for the next 5 seasons. The actual deal was 5 years, $16.2 million a year. So we went on DK Instagram and we asked fans to put this in NFL terms. People said Lamar Jackson joining the Chiefs, Brady to Tampa, Mahomes to the Niners, Justin Jefferson and CMC joining the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill to the Texans. So basically one of the greatest players of all time joining a really good team. GoJo, how would you put this in NFL terms?
You know what? I think it's interesting, Dad. I think the closest we would have gotten to this as American sports fans probably would have been Lamar Jackson moving before he ultimately signed that deal with the Baltimore Ravens, right? Because you're talking about Kylian Mbappé as a 25-year-old who's already accomplished everything he has, certainly personally as a teammate in France, winning a World Cup back in, I believe it was 2018. He's got all these accolades. He's still chasing a Champions League title, which now is something I'm sure is tied in to this move to Real Madrid and all the success that they've had there. But Dad, that's what it seems akin to. And especially, we've had so much conversation about this with Mbappé for a while. This has been something that's been rumored for so long, the same way we spent so much time digesting the will they, won't they of Lamar Jackson and the teams that could potentially have gone after him, albeit in a much more complicated system given the franchise tag that he was on at the time.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this news, where soccer is the most popular sport in the world, is obviously big-time news. The last time the best player in the world moved was Messi, right? From Barcelona to Paris Saint-Germain. And I think that was in 2021. And Messi was 34 years old. Mbappe's 25. And, I mean, just got some years to go. And obviously, the money he's at, 16.2 mil in American, the turn in American dollars, that's after taxes, whatever the taxing system is, but that's what he's taken home. Listen, we were waiting for this. We know the money is crazy in soccer anyway, of what they get. I actually thought it would be a little bit more than this, in all honesty, just seeing some of the crazy numbers in soccer. But this is monster news in the soccer whenever the best player is on the move. And every one of those comparisons in the NFL, I could see, because that's what it would mean for U.S. football as opposed to the world of soccer.
Well, remember, Dad, this all got skewed because you had the Saudis go after Kylian Mbappé for a while. That $700 million or an offer that would have been probably closer to $1 billion. It was $700 million north of what they were going to offer him at Real Madrid at the time. So that kind of skews the way that we perceive all of this, because like we've seen in golf with the Live League, Saudi Arabia has come in and tried to also buy a bunch of quality European footballers to bring over to their league. So everything, is going to feel like pennies on the dollar once you've seen those Candyland numbers thrown out here. But this is still a big time deal. Real Madrid is obviously one of the name players in European soccer that we see competing in the Champions League every year. But Dad, Kylian Mbappé also falls into that class of players that we talked about yesterday with Connor McDavid in the NHL, who's getting set to play in his first Stanley Cup final as a player who's largely been viewed as the best at what he does in the world in that sport. So much so, and I remember going through this when Mbappé won that World Cup when he was just, I believe, 18 years old, was you're watching a player who you don't need to know the sport to know he's better at it than most everybody else. And I think of that World Cup final with him and Messi, where they were going back and forth, where Mbappé just looked so heads and tails, even on the field with a guy in Messi who's probably one of the all-time greatest in the history of that sport. Physically, he can do things that are so different than his peers that it makes for such an exciting watch. And so hopefully this comes with continued and added scope for a guy that is certainly still, I think, in the prime of an unbelievable footballing career over there. Again, that's why, to me, the Lamar Jackson component, if you're going to go back to that DK comparison, holds true, because, again, there are just things physically he does that are so different that even some of his peers, who you might say are better overall players, like a Patrick Mahomes.
So I'm wondering if I were to win the Mega Millions, do I do it all like former NFL player? Well, LeBron's done it too, but Tom Brady just bought into a soccer club. We know Ryan Reynolds did as well. Is that what I do with some of the money, is buy into a soccer club? Is that the profitable thing to do now?
Well, that seems to be the popular thing to do right now. I mean, you mentioned all of those guys. J.J. Watt's also bought in to the team there. You can go all the way back to Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds, the Claudia Bellafato's sworn enemy on this show. The very corny, in her words, not my words. Ryan Reynolds, who's helped revive Wrexham FC and have them jumping up multiple levels. So, yeah, Dad, it seems to be the place that American athletes, or former athletes, I should say, are starting to park some of their money. And I think it's twofold. One is, you talk about the deep ties of fan bases here. It pales in comparison to what you see over in a lot of these clubs in European football, where the towns have been wrapped around these teams for so long. They've been able to resist a lot of the change. I mean, hell, we watched them kill the uprising of the Super League that tried to start up during the pandemic by basically threatening to riot. We think SEC fans after a title go buck. This is an entirely different level. So, yeah, I think it's that level of passion. It's an understanding that that league has always been incredibly popular and is only going to continue to rise. So it does seem like a fun vanity spend. I would support that for you.
Well, it seems the richest athletes or football players, I'll stick there, used to go into coaching, and then they would go into being like in management or the GM, and now it's ownership. You look at Tom Brady, part owner of the Raiders, the Aces, and now Birmingham City in soccer. You mentioned J.J. Watt and others. It seems these guys, because they're making ungodly amounts of money right now, are going right into ownership, which is it's pretty cool to see, actually.
Well, I mean, it's just they're making so much more money now than they ever did, right? I mean, while these guys aren't necessarily yet some of their mid-level NBA counterparts or the guys that we've seen in some of the contracts in Major League Baseball, like a lot of these quarterbacks especially, and you could say high-profile defensive players with J.J. Watt too, are sticking around long enough to make life-changing sums of money. It's why we don't see guys necessarily feeling like they've got to play 15 to 20 years anymore for the most part, because everyone's making a little bit more money than they used to. But if you are Tom Brady and you do stick around for 2 decades and win 1 million Super Bowls and then get paid $375 million by Fox, you got a little bit of extra money to throw around here if you feel like it. So that would probably, winning the lottery here today might put you closer to being like Tom Brady than you ever thought possible.
How about that? All of a sudden, I'd be making as much as those guys made in their contracts. Would I immediately be in that class of people where I can start getting into ownership and kind of being a top dog? Or, will I get laughed at because it's just won money and I didn't really earn it? I just happen to have the right numbers. I don't care either way. You can say whatever you want about me because A, it will be the last time you'll see me on the show, and B, you may never hear from me again.
Rude. Come on, Senior.
Oh, yeah, Dad, you didn't tell us what you were going to do. You didn't tell us what you were going to do when you won the lottery. I gave you my hopes and dreams, and you just sat there with your thumb, where. So you're going to tell us what you're going to do yet?
He's going to leave his son that he does his show with, and he's going to go and spend his money on a team, and he doesn't care about you, GoJo. That's what he just said.
Claudia, are you telling me if you won the $560 million, we'd see you tomorrow?
I would be here every day because I love this show. Okay? How do you know I'm not a millionaire?
How about that, Dad? Yeah, so you have no idea. And you still haven't given me an answer. What's your lottery pick? You talk about wanting to win the lottery all the time. We're talking about these guys. I mean, I just looked up. Leo Messi's worth $650 million, and that's probably still selling him short because it's the internet. So what are you going to do with your lottery winnings?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. It's a lot of money, and I'd have to put it all past your mom as well.
You said that you think about this every time the lottery comes up and you buy a ticket when these get to that point. You've never thought about how you'd spend the money here?
I probably have. I don't remember. You're right. I mean, I'm sitting there asking other people. I haven't even thought about it myself. I don't know. I don't know. It's so much money. It wouldn't be a car. I'm not into cars.
The first thing I would do, I think you'd like, our producer just said a golf course, but also a chef. Maybe. That is the first thing I would do is hire a chef so I don't have to cook food and they can make me whatever I want.
I think my dad should buy and fund whatever Netflix movie he wants starring Ray Romano and the other stars of his choosing to make the show of his dreams. Coming up next, we'll talk to Sarah Spain and see if maybe she'd like to buy better coverage for women's sports than we've seen this week. Next on GoJo and Golic.
appreciate the unparalleled amount of growth and attention that Caitlin, I'm her biggest fan, is driving to help become the beacon of so much interest and engagement and viewership to this game. But that narrative, that actually does a disservice to her, because the ones who grind through that type of grind become beasts. This is not hate. This is hoops.
As I said yesterday, giving the microphone to Chiney Ogwumike, almost always a great decision when you want to get smarter and cover something well. And we saw that yesterday in a sea of real bad takes talking about the WNBA of all things here. GoJo and Golic, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Claudia Bellafato. And for someone else that almost always makes me smarter every time I am with them in front of a microphone, Sarah Spain, our former teammate at ESPN and someone who has, I think, done as much or more for the coverage of women's sports overall as anybody I know, kind enough to join us now here. Sarah, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I agree about Chiney. She nailed that. I was like, thank goodness we needed this today.
I texted her yesterday when I saw her hosting. I said, I know this has probably got to be an exhausting day to be on air talking about this particular subject, but Dad, I was so thankful that she was the one that happened to be hosting NBA Today when all of this was going on.
Without a doubt. And Sarah, to look at this thing, we talked about this earlier, and I guess my overview thought, and I want to get yours, is just everybody is dropping into the WNBA now. It's been around for a long time, and there have been a lot of great players through the years. It just hasn't been covered like it has been today. So now people are seeing clips or hearing quotes, and they're making their assumptions based on that. When in reality, listen, as a former athlete, is there jealousy to young players? Yes. Could there be some racial undertone to this? Probably. I'm not in a position to say that. Is there this? These are not high priced, but these are big time, high profile rookies that you're coming into the league, like when LeBron came into the league, or I even mentioned when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson came into the league. There is some quote unquote jealousy from the players, of veteran players, to see younger players getting all this attention, and they're going to get hammered. This isn't the first flagrant foul we've seen in the WNBA. It won't be the last.
Well, but that's the point. For some people, it probably is, because it's the first time they've watched, right? So I think your point is spot on, but it's particularly fraught because it's a women's league. So I think the two biggest pieces that are different than when we see reporters parachute in to other sports is, number one, it involves women. And what we've seen, particularly in the sports world, is all these antiquated ideas that trickle in and make things weird. Things have been weird when people covered Serena Williams and Simone Biles and Anna Kournikova and Ronda Rousey and Caster Semenya. When women are involved, especially in the sports world, things can get weird. It feels like a year ago now, but Greg Doyle started us off in fine fashion with that creepy press conference that he had with Caitlin Clark, right? So there's that. Then not only women, but predominantly Black women, then a high majority of queer women. Now you've got all the isms in one place for people to stumble over and for them to be deeply affected by, particularly when people drop in and don't have any context, right? So Chicago Tribune editorial board, who didn't consult any sports writers, decided to drop a headline about how if this Kennedy Carter play happened anywhere outside of basketball, it would be assault. All right, now listen, we've said this about sports in the past, but now we're doing something deeply damaging to these players and this league, coming from people who are not at all versed, not only in women's sports, but sports at all. And then the second half of it, I think, is when we see people parachute into sports they don't know, usually what happens is they don't have like historical context, right? They like mispronounce the name of some famous person who used to play for the same team and everyone jumps on them. Or they talk about a player that actually has been injured all year and say he's been great because they tried to go do some research and read some old articles by mistake. Like those things happen and we nitpick them. And they've happened in this conversation too. Everyone's like, go look up Maya Moore, go watch Candace Parker's first season. And we're kind of annoyed, but handling it normally. When it becomes, we have no context for these plays, these players, what the league was doing before, I've never watched a game. I think Caitlin Clark's the only player that exists. And I'm ignoring all of the racial things that happen in terms of coverage, presentation, contracts, shoe deals, all of that. Then it makes people so much angrier about this intersection of new and old coverage than it would if it was just that they didn't know the game well.
Sarah, is there a way to stick the landing coming off of a stumble like this? Because you mentioned there was so much good press going into the season. We had the game start, and then we really seemed to, this week, while we had a gap in action amongst ports in their playoff mode right now, that everyone decided to go back to their worst form of this. Is there a way to come off of this doing this better?
God, I hope so, right? I'm like, so many of us are all echoing the same thing. Is like, when I imagined the WNBA leading conversation on every single network, it wasn't like this. And, we got a taste of this a couple years ago with Angel versus Caitlin in the NCAA tournament, and there were some real bad takes. There were some folks who stepped in it when they tried to talk about it, but it still felt like whenever people asked me, I was like, this is good for the game. Like, yeah, there's some morons, but there's morons talking about every sport. This kind of ability to create a debate, which we know drives so many of the main shows, was really key. People needed to know enough about both these players and the situation to have a take, right? And that's usually the issue with women's sports, is the connective tissue between the tentpole events, the big tournaments, or like a major news event isn't there. And if you don't know enough about the players and the teams in the league, you can't really have a debate on it, so you skip it, right? And what we're seeing now is there's enough knowledge about where Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark played, and then the teams that they're joining, that we're able to have conversations. They're just pretty bad ones. So I'm hoping that the further we get into the season and the more people are told, hey, Cameron Brink is crushing it defensively and is really putting together a potential DPOY year. If you look at Angel Reese and you're like, offensive rebounding, she's like out-rebounding most of the other teams combined offensively in her rookie season, which a lot of people said would be a tough transition for her. Like, if we can try to get some of these stories in through the cracks of all the garbage, then maybe people will have more information to use when they're talking about this. GoJo, I don't know who to blame for this. And I have seen everybody blamed. Caitlin, the WNBA, media, the other players, the fans, and in some ways it is kind of everybody. And it's that nobody can get their tempers cooled enough and really decide to talk about it with enough nuance to get it to the next step.
So we're also in a microwave society where you're just going to see a clip of that foul or a clip of Angel Reese saying something, and everybody's going to make their judgment on that. That's where we are right now. So let me take the other side of it. The WNBA, women's sports really, but we're talking WNBA, it's at its height right now. It is as high as it's ever been. So I'll go to the old saying, and you tell me if it's true. Any publicity is good publicity.
I think for those of us who cover it, we're like, I've actually seen reporters that are like, never mind, I don't want to grow the game. I'm good. You guys go on back. Head on back. We're good over here. Just leave us alone and we'll watch it and enjoy it. I think it's tongue in cheek. I don't think anybody really wants that. I do think it is so unhinged. And yesterday was the boiling point where everybody was like, oh, y'all, this is truly unhinged. So wild, some weird people on the corner stepping in, some really high profile people who have never watched a game saying dumb stuff. We're used to that. But it is so fraught that saying anything now becomes so terrifying. Literally saying anything. Your mentions are race, misogyny, just all the things. And so I think, yes, we still want the publicity. Yes, we still want the eyeballs. Yes, we still want the conversations. And can we also try to do it a little better? Can we also at least take a couple steps forward? Or just at some point stop bringing up the worst of us to shout it down because we're giving it a spotlight. And that's a lot of what I've been trying to do, is instead of my old Twitter clapback ways of let me retweet this moron and dunk on him and show everyone how dumb this idea is, I'm kind of just no, you stay over here and let me elevate some of the people getting it right, and let me try to have the more nuanced and thoughtful conversations about it, and hope it encourages others to do the same. We need a couple more really good outings. We need someone to go off for 50. Diana, I know you're old, but old people have dreams too. Get out there and give us 45. She had 30 the other day. We can do it. We just need something to get us talking about something else.
There we go. For the love of God, someone come and be our hero in this case. Looking for our hero at Sarah Spain on Twitter is where you can get more of those better takes and elevating a better form of dialogue on all of this. Sarah, thank you so much, friend. Great to catch up with you. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Love that we're talking women's sports. Kind of mostly.
All right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us. Leave us a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the DraftKings Network, our YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and more. If you miss any of that, you can catch the best of GoJo and Golic from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern, wherever you hear VSiN on the radio. And if you missed that there or our great guests, our thanks to Mike Curtis from the Dallas Morning News for helping us cover and look ahead towards the NBA Finals. Trick Williams, NXT champion, getting ready for their event in Las Vegas this weekend as a part of the WWE Universe. And our friend Sarah Spain, who you guys are going to be able to check out starting this July, daily women's sports podcasting. Good Game with Sarah Spain over at iHeart, going to be phenomenal. Again, very few people have been as dutiful about covering women's sports as a whole as our friend and former ESPN teammate Sarah Spain. So excited to see that project for her. You can hear all those interviews wherever you get your podcasts or right here as soon as we get done on YouTube. And guys, let's get to this. Something that I will be very interested to see the opinion of Claudia Bellafato on, considering she did not like the other Ryan's Reynolds, but Ryan Gosling, on the other hand, has been out here balling something serious. The run of movies, Dad, that he has been on going back to 2015, starting in The Big Short, working through La La Land, Blade Runner, the Barbie movie this year, and now, one I saw this past weekend, The Fall Guy, an ode to Hollywood stuntmen with Ryan Reynolds, doing a phenomenal job here. I loved the movie, Dad. To me, it was the perfect sort of Hollywood, dumb, funny, self-aware movie that Ryan Gosling has now become, I think, very good at making out here. I saw it. I know you and Mom have, I believe, seen it already here. I wanted to see, Claudia, if Ryan Gosling was able to escape your wrath or if he was also dubbed corny by you.
I love him. My favorite movie is The Notebook. I told you people this. I will watch any. I went and saw the Barbie movie. I knew I wasn't going to like it, but I still went to see it because I love him. He's one of the best actors of all time. Him and Leo, I don't even care if the movie gets a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. I am going to that movie. So 2 separate worlds of Ryan's for me. Yes, I love him, and I am going to see this movie.
One of the best actors of all time went with. Wow.
He's so good. He crushes every role. Come on.
He does a good job, yes. Mike, we did see Fall Guy. Me and your mother saw it at the theater. We actually went to a theater and watched it. And we walked out saying it was exactly what we thought it was going to be. It was funny. It was dumb funny. It was, you make fun of Hollywood. It was all the things we thought it was going to be. And I loved him in Barbie as well. So I am a fan of his. I'm a fan of Ryan Reynolds, too. I do not think he's corny. I am a fan of both Ryans. If I had to pick one, I would pick Ryan Reynolds over Ryan Gosling, but I'm not asked to really pick one. I love Fall Guy. I think he has very good delivery in his movies.
It was incredible. I thought the chemistry with him and Emily Blunt was awesome in this movie. Hannah Waddingham in this movie playing the overarching boss in this, and I won't give away any other plot elements by stating anything else. Winston Duke, I thought, stole the show also, working in concert with Ryan Gosling in this movie. So awesome cast, funny preference, and movies, they're allowed to just be, this was a fun time at the movies, which I feel like as the movie industry structurally has changed with the financing, we've lost some of those, and so I was glad to have it back, Claudia.
Oh, go ahead, Claudia. Go ahead.
Senior.
Go ahead.
Senior.
Yeah.
When we talk about actors, we talk about range. And this is no disrespect to actors that are in comedy movies often, but if we're talking range, Gosling can literally cover anything, and he absolutely crushes it. So that's why I love him, because I like my emotions to be pulled in several different directions. So let's just, maybe we should just stop comparing the two.
Because there is no. I like Ryan Reynolds way better than Ryan Gosling, and you're doing it solely on Notebook. You watch Notebook.
I'm not.
Claudia just also doesn't like comedies, so she's not only going to go so far with that because she doesn't like comedies. She can't sit and laugh at the movie.
Place Beyond the Pines, The Big Short, The Notebook, but he crushed Barbie. He has range, baby. It is not just because of The Notebook, but that was my whatever. Like Superbad to you guys, that was my coming to whatever you call it, Jesus moment.
Coming of age tale there, no doubt, for The Notebook. Speaking of coming of age in the darkest of times, Claudia, let's get to that and what's gone on with Chipotle recently.
Yes, and this one I actually am very heated about as well. So this is the influence of TikTok. People are calling it the viral phone rule. You go to Chipotle, you take your phone out and film them stacking up your burrito or your burrito bowl. And TikTokers are saying if you film them, they give you more portions. I think people are lying and they just cut the video to make it look edited. They're asking for double portions. Regardless, this is true, because I don't know if either of you are big Chipotle guys, but Senior, every time I go, it's like they're rationing, like they'll never have food again. It's like, sure, I'm paying $20 for burrito bowl. Give me all of it. It can't just be me. Listen, but Chipotle came out saying this is not a thing. Of course they're going to say that.
Of course they're going to say that. Listen, there are so many things you buy out there that have gotten smaller over time. Hell, I go to the cinnamon roll at Dunkin' Donuts, and it's gotten smaller over time. A lot of things have gotten smaller over time, as far as packages or what's in them. As far as Chipotle, I would completely agree. Listen, these are human being workers there. And if they see a camera that's rolling on them, I would say 8 out of 10 times they're going to give you more than you probably should get, because they don't want to be looked, all of a sudden they're on TikTok or they're on an Instagram story.
But this is horrific. What a horrific precedent to set here for these lunatics that go in with a full boom mic and lights videotaping these people on this. I understand the purpose that food reviews do serve at times, but this has gone so far overboard where you're taking employees that cannot be making a ton of money, who are taking their directive from someone else and trying to make their lives hell during a day that's already hard, you sickos. Yes, I am also ticked off that Chipotle's not. I understand that, but we shouldn't be reinforcing that because we're making people's lives harder. Yes, Chipotle should give us more portions. That should be a company thing here, but that doesn't mean you go in and harass workers to get it done.
Sure, yeah. I think we can all agree that it's wrong, but also Chipotle is wrong for doing that.
It's wrong, but it's going to happen because that individual worker can think about Chipotle all they want, but that individual worker is going to think about, my ass is now going to be on TikTok or an Instagram story, so I'm going to give a damn good portion here, so I'm not the one getting crushed. That's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's terrible, and if you pull out your phone and film Chipotle employees, you're kind of a dick. That's kind of my thought on this. So I would recommend you not do that, and that you go on about your life like a normal human being with some sense and just try and ask for more, because usually you can ask for more rice without it actually costing you anything here. Speaking of larger portions, let's get to the third here. Claudia, we love stadium renderings on this show, and we got new ones in Carolina, which involves David Tepper, which means gulp.
Yeah. Panthers and Charlotte FC looking to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into Bank of America Stadium by 2029, so we'll have to wait, but you mentioned it. We do have the renderings. $800 million we're talking about. Upgrades with new seats, expanded team store, reimagined exterior pavilion. The picture has fireworks going on, so it's pretty intense. New video board, sound system, $650 million in public funding. City vote set for June 24th. It looks sick, yeah, and that's what money does, Gojo.
Yeah, listen, again, we said before, much like movie promos, if you can't make the trailer sing, and in this case, if you can't make the stadium rendering look cool as hell, then you have already strayed too far, and this is going to be a disaster. Dad, it looks sick, but like everything else led by David Tepper right now, I have major concerns about how it'll actually be executed.
Yeah, you wonder if he'll fire the group that's doing the renovations at some point. That's what he does so well. He put $117 million into it already before June. He'll may put another $420 million in overages, but they are looking for public funding of $650 million, and that vote is set for June 24th. So that's always the question. If you live there, are you going to vote for this? Because now they try and find a way to tax like visitors more than the people there as far as trying to get money. But this is another one of those where you say, you owners, you make a ton of money, pay for it yourself. But also when the vote comes up, you get held hostage. You don't want to lose your team there. So I think it's always a tough situation for the public there. Do they want to help fund?
At this point, how much you really going to miss the Panthers that we've seen in recent years? But I digress. Maybe that's, again, contingent on if David Tepper is still there or not at this point here. We hope you stick around here. And if you do, you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.